Afternoon. First of all, we wish to thank the University of Science and Philosophy for inviting us to speak at this conference. We have been students of Walter and Leo Russell for many years. We represent an organization called Energy Unlimited, and our work we call Vortex Mechanics. We are an engineering research team and publishers. We invite you to pick up literature on the resource table about our newsletter, Causes, where for years we have tried to educate on the detailed aspects of the Russell's cosmogony. We use our newsletter to help fund and to report on our research into what we call a new non-destructive technology. Our objective is to turn the theories of Walter and Leo Russell's cosmogony into hardware. By hardware, we mean machines and devices which can perform for us as energy slaves and provide us all the power and transportation and the wonders of our current technology and agriculture, but with one main difference. We want these energy slaves where they do not enslave us. Currently, our technological devices and our agricultural methods are enslaving us, as we have witnessed by the deteriorating condition of our planet's health and humanity's health, which cannot be separated. It is not our purpose here to go into details, facts, and figures about the environmental predicament. You've heard some excellent presentations on this already, and you are aware and concerned, or you wouldn't be at this conference. We are all concerned that our planet is losing its capacity to support life. We are destroying our basic life-supporting mediums, namely the soil, water, and atmosphere. We are not treating our planet as a living organism with needs of her own. We are disrupting the organization of the layers of the soil. We are denuding it of plant cover, not realizing this is the same as damaging a person's skin. It's a known fact that if just 1/3 of a person's skin is damaged, death results. We are extracting the internal fluids of oil and gas and burning them, not realizing that these are the lifeblood and lymph of this organism, Earth, and that they have functions within the planet's metabolism, just as our organs and fluids have within our bodies. We are then polluting the soil with tons of deadly chemicals, and we are even exploding atomic bombs within her bowels. We are creating more demand for water, and at the same time polluting our water sources and channeling water in unnatural ways, making it impossible for nature's water household to perform its natural purification process and to create more water. We are stepping up our oxygen production by burning fossil fuels and industrialization, and at the same time killing off our oxygen producers. Results are showing up as climatic and geological changes, extinctions of thousands of species, and the general accelerating decline in the new generation's health. If we put humanity's impact upon our planet into a time perspective, we will find that if all the Earth's geological time eras were compared to a scale of 1,000 days, the Cenozoic era, which is the small red era, which is the era that man has existed upon Earth, would only be 6 hours long. And yet, in roughly 180 years, or the time of our industrial age, mankind's demands have gobbled up recklessly and unopposed nearly all of the natural resources accumulated by the Earth in a course of 4 billion years. From this, that we can see that enterprising human demolition squads did actually manage to dismantle our planet 22 million times faster than the creative forces of the universe could put it together. Now, these are plain and simple facts that any junior high school student can verify. And the embarrassing ethical question is, why do we continue unchecked? Our junior high school students may demand an answer from us at this crucial hour. Our authorities and governments, economists, industrialists, are so taken by the national ambition and the pressure of the economic system to increase the total annual production of an industrialized country by a minimum of 5% annually, that they choose to ignore the effect of exponential growth. If, for instance, world resources of a particular metal are assessed to last 1,000 years based on present day's figures of consumption, a steady increase in a 5% annually would already exhaust the supply in 81 years. The United Nations organization FAO actually predicts that by the year 2000, the Earth will have, quote, dried out, end quote, and that we will have reached the end of our available natural resources as utilized today by the end of the century. Now that leaves us with less than 11 years to look for solutions. We do not advocate doing without technological devices or our present conveniences. No one wants to give up electricity or go back to hand labor, right? We do not advocate a patch-up technology, nor a system of regulation on the destructive consequences, not just an attempt to undo or to counterbalance, if at the same time we continue the causes of the unbalance and the deterioration. But rather we propose to prove that it is possible to reverse our direction toward suicide by literally reversing our applications of motion in technology and agriculture. And I wish to repeat that because that's a new concept. Literally reversing our applications of motion in technology and agriculture. Why do we zero in on technology and agriculture? Because they have been our greatest impact upon our planet. We have allowed technology to dictate our path and our future. The trends of the future are guided and controlled by the next gadget, which will influence our lives and infiltrate our homes. And obviously these gadgets are getting out of hand. They are of a deteriorating, degenerating nature. We have become out of balance. We're taking more than we're giving. How are we doing this? By building and operating our gadgets and machines on principles that nature uses for decomposition, dissipation, and decay of matter. Therefore, education is necessary to bring the mass consciousness awareness to an awareness of a two-way universe. The Russells' work was interwoven with the sex principle of nature. They stressed the opposites of each and every condition and their balanced rhythmic interchange. Or in other words, excuse me, never mind. Or in other words, the cyclic predominance of one partner and then the other. Now socially, psychologically, and personally, the masses are becoming aware of this need for recognition and cooperation of both sides. Now we must implement these awarenesses into our physical habits, into our physical machines, into technology, so that when inventions emerge, they will be based on life-supporting principles of operation instead of life-threatening principles. Have you ever thought about what principles of operation our science and technology has as underlying laws? Our basic scientific principles are those of entropy, which teaches us that the universe is exploding, is slowly running down by the gradual waste of radiant energy. Now, this one-sided belief that the universe is running down is the assumption upon which all our mechanical practices are based. This results in our inefficient power generation, where we can never break even or have a gain. Chinese firecrackers, modern rockets, reciprocating engines, jet engines, heat engines of all kinds, all are based on entropy. And they act exactly according to the laws of thermodynamics, which man drew up. Truly, man invented machines as they are, and they will always obey man-made laws. The laws of thermodynamics and entropy deal with explosion, heat, the use of pressure, radiation, and the burning of our resources. Technologists and engineers of today use these exothermic processes, We use heat and pressure more than their opposites to change and move. We use expansion and explosion to push and force our way along in our power and propulsion. We use the radioactive decaying process of nature to capture a small amount of energy as it passes by on its journey back into space. And we are discharging our planet and the life therein by copying and enhancing these destructive processes. The exothermic processes of explosion, expansion, push, pressure, and radiation are nature's methods of decaying, destroying, degenerating her creations. If mankind could but become two-way conscious, it would be seen that nature also composes, creates, charges, builds up, generates. She does that by using the forces of contraction, pull, suction, and implosion, which is a word that means the opposite of explosion. Our message today is that we can copy the mechanics of these generative processes, the endothermic processes, in our machinery instead of the exothermic, and we can reverse our destructive impact upon our planet. Physics usually is a hated subject in school. The masses reject it at the gut level. Most people reject a deeper study into physics or engineering because they have not answered the primary first questions we wanted to know about as a child. Those that you were so eagerly looking forward to when you went to science class. Science starts off filling us with amazing phenomena, telling children the wonders and beauties of the earth and its creations. But when it comes to explaining how birds fly and how plants grow and why lightning and tornadoes have so much power, they don't explain the causes, but they merely start comparing and putting math into observed effects. Now it is time for every citizen to question why and how these things happen. Become aware of what we're doing when we push a button or when we step on the accelerator. To know from where and how that power comes to us, and ask why we are having a deteriorating result around us. We need to link what we're actually doing with what is happening in the unseen and invisible universe. It's really not that complicated. The basic causes are simple, and they can be understood by children. And parallels of the basic causes can be drawn in each area of life. To understand the causes, we must look at the background mechanics of creation. Russell's mechanics of creation are not an abstraction. All mediums, all actions, physical or psychological, all areas of life function with the same basic mechanics of operation. Certain relationships of action-reaction bring about the same results. And these relationships, these movements, are not a blackboard full of formulas. Russell explained the cycle of creation and decreation and all the phenomena of our universe with a three-dimensional space geometry. If you're familiar with Russell's writings, then you know he said, if you want to know our universe and all the phenomena within, then know just one cycle of the wave. For he pointed out to us that the wave is a cyclic, metabolizing, pulsing whole process, which consists of alternately in-breathing, a charging compression, and then an out-breathing, an expansion and a discharging, repeated eternally. This process is the basis of life and death, the construction and the dissipation of all matter and all the physical phenomena, whether in the macrocosm or the microcosm. Furthermore, Russell told us that all matter is nothing but this wave motion, long before particle physicists began their debate about whether matter is a particle or wave. Let's look briefly at the basic building blocks of the Russell cosmogony. We have here some acrylic models which will help us demonstrate the geometry of the wave. In order to look at geometry, we have to begin to think in 3 dimensions at once. You may think we do, but we're still a 2-dimensional linear society. A good example is in our directions. Our north, south, east, and west are all upon the surface of our planet. We do not consider down or up or in and out or towards our planet and away from our planet in our normal use of directions. But to think in 3 dimensions at once, we must consider them also. If you can comprehend the wave cycle as a 3-dimensional form made up of pairs of spiraling vortices, base to base and point to point, then one can see the wave. The wave represents the path from the invisible background of energy to the seen and sensed world of matter. If one can think of all particles of matter on a transition journey from a nebulous dissolved state like salt in water on its way to a condensed solidified state, then one can watch creation happen in the mind. Matter is contracted wave motion. Its motion is speeded up from a rarefied state of stillness, which occurs in a cubical form. It is compacted together to give a solidified appearance approaching a spherical shape. Russell tells us that the background of space has certain geometrical patterns of structure which cause the patterns of motion known as the wave. Cubes are the basic form in space, which result from lines of force in space. The cube is the invisible surrounding wave field, the negative space around every particle of matter. Cube walls are pressure walls which mirror and reflect. A cube is divided with the 3-dimensional planes in the middle. These are the projector planes. They begin motion in the cube. They consist of flat, 2-dimensional, spiraling, circulating energy. These planes then project that energy out of the center to give motion a 3rd dimension. Energy or light is projected upon the cube walls, and then it is reflected back from the cube walls and from the corners in a radar fashion. Excuse me, it's supposed to go in there. Anyway, this sits into the cube. This reflection is angular at first, but then it becomes more and more spiraling and circular. This path of spiraling motion becomes the vortex. And pairs of these vortex formations create the wave phenomenon. Excuse me. The vortex spiral has 2 forces working within it: the centripetal and the centrifugal. The proper pronunciation of those words, if you're scientific, is centripetal and centrifugal. But for the sake of hearing, I'm going to distinctly pronounce them centripetal and centrifugal. So bear with me. One force called the centripetal force proceeds inward, if you follow the black arrow, towards a common center to create this condensation, to accumulate energy and motion into a smaller volume and to create matter. This motion is the endothermic 1/2 of the cycle. The other force acts 180 degrees to that and is called centrifugal. It attempts to restore the evacuated space by redistributing the accumulated energy back to where it came from. It dissipates, radiates, and expands back to equilibrium. This force causes the exothermic 1/2 of the cycle. The vortex is the tool which gathers mass into spherical shapes by centripetal spiral motion, first squeezing closer and closer together, and then redistributing that matter by throwing it outward in a centrifugal spiral, like water that is thrown off the edge of a wheel when it's turned at a certain speed. The vortex's centripetal compression compacts a huge volume of potential energy of the cubical wave field into tiny solid spheres. Here is the sphere or particle. This represents the compressed solid of high potential. It is packed closely together. Whether it's an atom or a sun, this little yellow sphere would represent the particle of matter. Now, after the birth and maturity of this mass or sphere, it begins its decaying half of its cycle. The sphere will centrifugally unwind back into space by expanding or exploding slowly, if you will. This represents the sphere after it has reached maturity. When it begins to age, it oblates. It gives off around its equatorial belt in a flattening spiral, which, with centrifugal force, redistributing its energy and mass back into space. And this flattening spiral will then become the base of another vortex projection here, to repeat the cycle of wave formation over and over. Now that's the basic wave mechanics of creation and decreation as presented by Russell. Of course, this process can occur at different frequencies to produce light waves at 186,000 times per second, or at slower rates for all the other electromagnetic phenomena of our universe. But the mechanics of operation is always the same. It is a cyclic, pulsing, in-breathing and out-breathing process. This can represent any wave vibration. This is electricity along a wire, AC current, pulsing, breathing in and out, off and on. First concentrating, then a relax, a release, and then another charging surge. All mediums follow this same path of motion. This is water flowing along, rhythmically pulsing, concentrating, then breathing, having a second of turbulence, then charging and flowing forward again. This is our breathing in and out. This is the birth and death of suns, atoms, sound, and color, with all the same mechanics, cyclically coiling up to concentrate and solidify, so we can observe an effect, and then unwinding so that effect disappears. It is the totality of nature's creation and decreation. This is why Russell said, to understand one complete wave cycle, you can understand the phenomena of creation. Now here's what science and technology are doing. They are taking only one half of this cycle and copying it, the expansion half. First, they observe the effect of creation, matter, after it has reached a concentrated enough form to notice and sense. Then they measure and assess the amount of energy that has been compacted together. They're impressed. They desire some of that energy. Then they observe that nature will continue the cycle and dissolve that energy by slowly expanding or exploding it. Then they say, let's copy that. Let's do it faster. Let's step up the expansion and explosion and use that energy. We are copying the mechanics of nature's disintegration. We take what nature has created and charged with potential and burn it, explode it, break it apart, never thinking that we could copy the mechanics of the way nature builds it up in the first place. All of our systems of today are based upon the latter half, the dying, exploding, entropic half of this cycle. We know how to analyze, take apart, decompose, destroy everything on this planet by copying nature's decomposing exothermic processes with centrifugal motion. What we need to learn is how to synthesize, create, and generate by copying nature's endothermic process, which uses centripetal motion. Russell showed us how the vortex uses the centripetal force for the creative process. Our research is based upon copying, guiding, and controlling this centripetal motion.